News Nation's Elizabeth Prann is a wife, a mom, and host of the Raising America podcast. She joins us today to talk about Tuesday's Supreme Court hearings of two cases
Hey, Ken.
involving trans women, i.e. biological men, participating in women's school sports, and recent decisions allowing bans on so-called gender-affirming care for minors in Tennessee. We say good morning, Elizabeth. Good to have you on.
Ken, I can't wait. I can't believe I get to be with you in person. This is lovely. Hey, as you talked about being a mother, talk about triggering, right? This particular story when we're taught. And when you take a step back, if the Supreme Court makes, which of course we'll have to wait till spring, early summer, a very narrow ruling, that could be different. But the Supreme Court is the law of the land. They don't always make narrow rulings. So are we redefining Title IX, right? As a mother, I have this conversation with my daughter all the time. If I were to compete against my husband, let's say, who was a professional athlete for 15 years, he's in the 90th percentile of his height and weight. I'm like an average sized woman. The fact of the matter is there's really no competition there. So when I look at my daughter as a parent, I cover these stories and I hear both sides and I have empathy, right? I have a pulse. I'm a human. But at the same time, are we raising children to conform to society, or are we telling children that the whole society has to conform to them? A colleague of mine, Leland Vittert, wrote a book, Born Lucky. He was born with autism. His dad said, and I'm gonna have you really figure out how to survive in society. Society is not going to conform to you. He's a primetime news anchor. He's a good friend of mine. I couldn't be more proud of his work, but he didn't grow up making society adjust to him. So it really is a broader story for me, right? I know I'm taking a huge macro view here on this one.
Well, no, I think you're nailing it. And what is the point of having a boys' room and a girls' room, or having a men's changing room and a women's changing room? What is the point if anyone could just feel whatever they are and just do it? As I've said, I had this conversation with my surgeon the other day. I've had many surgeries for a whole bunch of things, none of them for gender reassignment, by the way. And the other day I said, what would happen if I went into my doctor? I pointed to him and I said, you know what? I'm not identifying as having a left arm. I'd like it removed. And I demanded you remove it. He said, well, if I went ahead and removed it, I'd probably lose my license. I said, why? Why is it okay to have my penis removed because I feel that, but it's not okay for me to make a decision about myself to have my arm removed? Why? Who made that judgment? Because there was a point when the American Psychological Association said that gender dysmorphia and gender dysphoria, they're two different things, but in the same plane, that they were a disorder. It was a disorder. So since when do we act on disorders? By doing surgery. And in this case, this is just ridiculous. At what point do we say, okay, enough is enough? You may feel you're trans, but we will no longer feed into your insanity. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean. I'm a gay man. I'm talking as a gay man, so you could send all your emails to me. At what point do we say, okay, we have to stop pretending there are big pink balloons behind us and wake up to reality? You were born with a penis. You have an Adam's apple. You have big hands. You are biologically a man. You do not belong in the biological women's locker room.
Now, Ken, if you want to go through menopause, we could do that together. I'm going to invite you to that. I would love you to join me. I'm just starting the journey. I had this conversation with Jillian Michaels. She was on the show because she has a son and I have a son. So let's say our son comes to us and says, I want to wear a dress to school. You're not hurting anybody. You're not impacting anyone's day. You might be making someone a little bit uncomfortable. But if my 8-year-old son says, I want to become a girl, that's where I say, okay, well, let's say my daughter came to me and said, I'm really fat. I'm going to stop eating. Oh, do I reinforce that behavior? Do I say, you know what, you are fat. Why don't you go throw up after you eat? That's not what we do when people are, we may validate them, but then we guide them through, hey, you're suffering from body dysmorphia. I'm not going to let you starve yourself to death. So we're talking about young people who are, why are we making life more complicated than it needs to be? We're telling boys and girls they have to be something that I picked up a book from Barnes & Noble. It was the Gay BCs. And it was all of these different words, not apples, bananas, and carrots, but all of these gender affirming words when it comes to reading. Why aren't we teaching them how to read? Why aren't we teaching them how to figure out financial literacy? Why aren't we figuring out proper grammar? There's grammar. There's new studies that kids can't even read these days. But instead,
Mhm.
we're focusing on things like this, or changing your gender, or playing in a different sport, or playing in sports, in girl sports or boy sports. Just keep it simple. Keep it simple for the kids. They have enough going on.
Right. And the whole idea of using different pronouns, like, again, who gave whomever the license to rewrite the English language? And by the way, other languages don't even do that. In Spanish, they don't rewrite the pronouns. It's not that. It's only an English thing by like white English guilt, mostly by females and very emasculated men who feel it. Yeah, we must do this to accommodate. Shut up. Just shut up. We're
Yeah.
talking about like 1/4% of the population that has psychological disorders. By the way, I'm not saying hate on anybody. Love your friends, love your trans people. I love them too. I have dozens of friends who are trans, being gay, tons. That doesn't mean I have any disrespect for them. I love them very much. But I'm saying the minute you come and tell me how I have to live my life, the minute you tell me I have to let my daughter stand next to a naked man in a locker room, that's where I draw the line. No, because now you're imposing your values on the rest of us. And that's where it's got to stop. We got a minute left, Elizabeth. You got to tell me about your sourdough
Oh.
coming up on the Raising America podcast.
Listen, I know you're probably laughing. We're doing that next week. We're doing a fascinating story this week about a brain scan. I had my brain scanned by Dr. Amen. He scanned like 250,000 brains. And so it was really fascinating behind the scenes. He's working with the White House on this brain revolution. Next week, we are tackling sourdough, Ken, because it is trending all over the internets of the world. Everyone is talking about sourdough. Why is it such a big deal? We're going to dig deep. We're actually talking to someone who's written books about it. So have me on next week, if you will. We can talk all things controversy. And if I bring in some fermented bread, I'll only take up 30 seconds.
Done. You get Prann from News Nation and the Raising America podcast. Have a wonderful day, my friend. We'll catch you next week.